She wasn't rich, she wasn't powerful, and on paper she had no right to be behind the wheel of that car. But when Chloe Williams sped through the downtown intersection at 97 miles per hour, weaving past sirens, running red lights, and forcing a city bus to a sudden stop, none of that mattered. To some, she looked like a reckless criminal hijacking a hypercar, but to one 6-year-old girl gasping for air in the back seat, Chloe was something else entirely. She was hope, the kind that doesn't wait for permission, the kind that doesn't care whose name is stitched on a hospital wing. In less than 9 minutes, Chloe's decision would make national headlines, but not for the reasons you think. Because when billionaire Charles Grayson stormed into the ER, screaming about his destroyed Ferrari, no one expected the truth that came next. But what happened next? Even the hospital staff couldn't believe. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Charles Grayson built his empire with algorithms, acquisitions, and a heart cold enough to freeze out anyone who got in the way. He didn't believe in chaos, only control. But in the early hours of that Thursday morning, as security footage showed his $3 million Ferrari tearing through the city under the command of someone who shouldn't even have had access to the garage, everything he thought he controlled unraveled. Chloe Williams was a maid, a housekeeper, invisible in his world of private jets and boardrooms, but now she was in the center of it. And not just as a thief, but as the woman being accused of endangering his only daughter. So the questions began. Why would Chloe risk everything to take that car? How did she even get inside it without the code? And most of all, was Charles's daughter really dying in the back seat? Or was this about something else entirely? Charles Grayson didn't just build his wealth, he engineered it. A tech mogul from Ohio with no Ivy League education and no inherited millions, he was the kind of man who saw vulnerability as a flaw and emotion as inefficiency. His rise was brutal, brilliant, but brutal. And when his marriage collapsed under the weight of ambition, he fought with the same surgical focus to win full custody of his daughter, Elena. To the courts, he was polished and persuasive. But those closest to him whispered about long business trips, missed birthdays, and a 6-year-old girl who had grown used to falling asleep in empty rooms. Charles believed that if you could buy it, you could fix it. And if you couldn't buy it, it didn't matter. To him, control was love. Money was protection. And anyone who questioned that didn't belong in his orbit. That's why what happened with Chloe Williams was so difficult for him to understand. Chloe Williams was never supposed to matter in the Grayson household. Hired through a third-party agency, she kept to herself, spoke when spoken to, and never missed a shift. Her references were solid, her background check clean. But what the files didn't show was that Chloe had once dreamed of wearing scrubs, not aprons. Years earlier, she had been enrolled in nursing school, quietly excelling, until her mother's cancer diagnosis forced her to drop everything. Caregiving became her full-time reality, and by the time her mother passed, the debt was too steep and the dream too distant to return to. So she worked. She folded towels, wiped counters, and cleaned rooms larger than the apartment she shared with her younger sister. It was in one of those rooms, Elena's, that something unexpected happened. A bond. Quiet, unspoken, but real. Elena didn't talk much to her father, but she laughed with Chloe, trusted her, and ultimately followed her. It was supposed to be a quiet celebration. Just a few people, some cake, and a sunny brunch at Charles Grayson's penthouse to mark Elena's 6th birthday. Chloe had set the table. Elena had insisted on using her favorite pink cup. Everything was normal, until it wasn't. Midway through her second slice of cake, Elena clutched her chest and froze. Her lips paled, her eyes wide. Then she collapsed. Staff panicked, 2 of them calling Charles, who was upstairs in his home office, deep in negotiations with overseas investors. But Chloe didn't wait. She dropped to the floor, checked Elena's pulse, and called 911. ETA, 14 minutes, the dispatcher said. Chloe looked around. The inhaler was missing. No time. No ambulance would make it in time. Then she saw it. Charles's Ferrari, parked just outside, keys usually kept in the valet drawer by the stairs. She ran, and within seconds, the city became a blur behind her. Traffic cameras caught her moving fast, recklessly fast. Red lights ignored, turns taken on the wrong side of the road, Chloe weaving through lanes with Elena in the passenger seat, gasping, eyes fluttering, barely conscious. Police dispatch flagged the vehicle as stolen within 4 minutes of departure. Helicopter units were activated. But Chloe didn't care. Every moment was a calculation. Breathing versus not. Life versus delay. When she finally skidded into the emergency lot of South Point General, the front bumper clipped a fire hydrant. She didn't look back. She ran into the ER holding Elena, screaming for help. But before she could even explain, 2 hospital security guards tackled her to the ground. A nurse pulled Elena from her arms. Chloe was shaking, bleeding, and crying. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't breathe. Minutes later, Charles stormed through the doors, demanding to know where his daughter was, before seeing his car totaled outside, and then seeing Chloe in cuffs. The trauma team moved fast. Elena was rushed into surgery without her father seeing her, oxygen mask on, her chest rising too slow, too shallow. Chloe sat in a hard plastic chair just 20 feet away, her wrists cuffed, her face still stained with sweat and fear. A young officer asked questions she couldn't process. Where did you get the keys? Did you steal the vehicle intentionally? Why didn't you wait for EMS? Chloe barely spoke. Her eyes were locked on the doors Elena had disappeared behind. Then Charles walked in, rage before recognition. "You stole my car," he shouted. "She took my Ferrari." Doctors urged him to step back. He didn't, not until the lead surgeon emerged, gloves off, face stern. "If she had gotten here 2 minutes later," he said quietly, "your daughter would have had irreversible brain damage. That car didn't save her life. The woman you're yelling at did." The story should have ended there, but it didn't. Someone leaked the hospital's security footage. Grainy images showed Chloe sprinting out of the building, child in arms, then the unmistakable shot of her sliding into the Ferrari and peeling out. News outlets jumped on it within hours. Maid steals hypercar, but saves billionaire's daughter? The city was divided. Online commenters turned Chloe into a symbol of courage to some, of recklessness to others. Interview crews showed up at her apartment building. Neighbors described her as quiet, reliable, always polite. Nurses at the ER said they'd never seen anyone bring in a child that fast, not even paramedics. But others questioned her judgment. Police unions issued cautious statements. Charles Grayson gave one interview. She could have called someone. There were protocols. This wasn't bravery. It was a crime. And through it all, Chloe stayed silent. She didn't hire a lawyer. She didn't seek attention, she just waited. The turning point didn't come from a lawyer or a journalist, it came from a doctor. In a closed-door meeting with hospital administrators, the attending trauma surgeon revealed a critical piece of information. Chloe Williams wasn't just a maid. She had once trained in that very hospital as an emergency nurse. Her file had quietly been archived years earlier after she withdrew from her program to care for her dying mother. She had left in good standing. No malpractice, no red flags. And on the day of Elena's collapse, those instincts, the ones sharpened by hours of trauma drills, came back without hesitation. She had checked Elena's pupils. She had counted breaths. She had known exactly how long it would take for an ambulance to arrive, and how little time the child had left. And perhaps most damning of all, the inhaler wasn't there. Someone had forgotten to pack it. Chloe had noticed. No one else had. When hospital staff confronted Charles Grayson with the full report, he didn't say a word at first. Just sat, arms folded, jaw tight. A nurse finally broke the silence. "You yelled louder for your car than for your daughter," she said flatly. The administrators didn't press charges. Police dropped their case within 24 hours. Chloe Williams walked out of the station the next day, wearing the same clothes she'd been tackled in. No apology, no acknowledgement. Charles was standing across the lot when she exited. He didn't approach her, didn't even nod, just watched. Cold, silent. The kind of silence that says more than any headline. Chloe didn't look back. She got into her sister's car and disappeared into the quiet of the morning. Her record was cleared, but her name was still everywhere, on the news, in the blogs, on talk radio. Everyone had an opinion, except the one person she saved. Chloe Williams didn't make a scene. She didn't go on television. She didn't try to reclaim her name in front of flashing cameras or viral hashtags. Instead, she went back to the penthouse one final time, gathered her things, and left a single note folded neatly on the kitchen counter. It read, "I don't need thanks. I don't need credit. I just need space to breathe." Tucked beside it was the picture Elena had drawn from her hospital bed. Two stick figures holding hands under a heart, one labeled me, the other my angel. Chloe never said goodbye in person. She didn't need to. The goodbye had already happened when she placed Elena in the arms of a nurse and allowed herself to be cuffed. She had made her choice. Not for attention, not for approval, but because sometimes doing the right thing is the loudest kind of silence a person can offer. Charles Grayson wasn't a man easily shaken, but when he visited Elena days later, the strength he wielded in boardrooms didn't follow him into her bedroom. She was quiet, tucked under a pink blanket, still weak, but healing. On the nightstand beside her was the drawing, the one Chloe had never taken, crumpled slightly at the corner, but still intact. Elena clutched it gently, her tiny fingers brushing over the word angel, like it meant something more than just a name. Charles didn't speak. He just stood there, watching her sleep, knowing that no wire transfer or courtroom win could fix the fracture he had created. He had measured value in dollars, but his daughter had measured it in love, and that love had come not from him, but from the woman he'd tried to criminalize. Some debts, he realized, can't be paid with money, only with change. Was Chloe Williams reckless or brave? Should she have waited for help, or was her instinct the very reason a child is still alive today? Was Charles Grayson right to demand answers, to protect what was his? Or did he fail to recognize what couldn't be bought, what couldn't be replaced, what stood trembling in handcuffs and still made the choice to save? The truth isn't always clean, and justice doesn't always come with a verdict. So what would you have done? In her place or in his? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And if you thought this story was powerful, wait until you hear what happened when a man tried to bury his shame, only to have it stare back at him from the courtroom 20 years later. Hit that subscribe button now, because these are the stories they don't want you to remember. The fallout didn't end when Chloe Williams walked away from the hospital. In fact, it only intensified. Charles Grayson, already a public figure known for his sharp business acumen and sharp tongue, found himself at the center of a storm. Interview clips began surfacing, his early statements cold, transactional. One particularly viral soundbite, "It wasn't her car. End of discussion." That clip played across daytime talk shows, news panels, and late-night monologues. His PR team tried to reframe it, but the damage was done. The public wasn't angry because a billionaire cared about his car. They were angry because he seemed to care more about it than his daughter. Hashtags like "Chloe was right" and "Ferrari over family" trended for days. A late-night host joked, "Charles lost a car and gained a lesson. Shame it took a near-death experience for him to learn it." And beneath all the noise, something undeniable lingered. People were choosing Chloe's side. Then came the story behind the story. Local outlets dug deeper into Chloe Williams's past, not for scandal, but for clarity. Her neighbors remembered her walking her mother to dialysis appointments. Her nursing school professor spoke on record. She was top of her class, compassionate, sharp. She just disappeared one semester. Old classmates recalled her calm under pressure, her steady hands during simulation drills. And then came something no one expected. A letter from a former ER nurse, anonymous but verified, claiming that Chloe had once stopped a code blue in the middle of training. She knew what to do, always did. The public narrative shifted from Maid to medic, not just instinct, but experience, not just emotion, but excellence. Chloe's silence, it seemed, wasn't guilt. It was grace. And the more people learned, the more impossible it became to see her as anything other than what she had been all along: prepared, brave, essential. Meanwhile, Elena's recovery was slow but steady. Her breathing returned to normal. Her speech became stronger. But one thing didn't heal as quickly: her spirit. Nurses said she grew quieter in the days following Chloe's departure, refused to eat her favorite breakfast, asked for the blue lady who used to braid her hair. Charles visited daily, trying to fill the silence. But Elena didn't ask him to stay. One night she pointed to the drawing she'd made, the one with her and Chloe under the heart. "Can I mail it to her?" she asked softly. The nurse said they'd try. That same day, one of the nurses documented Elena whispering, "She's not bad. Daddy's wrong." The clip didn't go viral, but it passed through hospital halls like a sacred echo. In her own way, Elena had already chosen her hero, not by blood, not by title, but by how it felt to be safe. Outside the hospital, something else was happening. A group of nurses stood outside South Point General holding signs. "This is why we don't speak up, and protocols shouldn't punish instinct." For them, Chloe's story was personal. Too many had been reprimanded for breaking minor rules to save lives. One nurse choked up during a news interview. "She didn't steal that car. She commandeered it the way we'd grab a crash cart. The only difference is, she didn't have a badge." The movement grew. Chloe didn't attend the protests, but her impact was felt in every chant, every interview, every shift change, where nurses reminded each other what courage looks like. One union leader put it simply: "Chloe Williams reminded us that sometimes the right call isn't in the handbook, it's in your chest. And if that scares the people in charge, maybe they shouldn't be in charge." And suddenly one woman's decision was rewriting a system. Months passed. The headlines faded. The protests quieted. But Chloe Williams was still gone. No social media, no interviews, no trace. Until one day, she received a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, an acceptance letter. A full scholarship to a private medical university, tuition, housing, supplies, all covered. The institution was real, the offer confirmed. But the donor? Anonymous. Chloe folded the letter gently, her hands trembling slightly. She knew who had sent it, the man who had never said thank you, the man who had screamed for his Ferrari while his daughter lay turning blue. Charles Grayson hadn't spoken to her directly, but this was his way of doing what he couldn't with words. Still, Chloe didn't respond. She didn't pack a bag or schedule a campus visit, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't reacting to what someone else thought she deserved. She was choosing. A week later, another envelope arrived. This one was different. Scribbled handwriting, a sticker of a cartoon heart on the seal. It was from Elena. Inside was a letter in crayon, folded 4 times, with spelling that only a 6-year-old could get away with. "Please come back, I miss you. Daddy said sorry in his eyes but not his mouth. I made you a new drawing. Love, Elena." Tucked inside was the picture, this time with 3 figures: Elena, Chloe, and a new version of Charles, not shouting, just standing, still, watching. Chloe read the letter 3 times. Then she placed it in a shoebox along with the scholarship offer and the hospital badge she never got to wear. She didn't go back to the penthouse. She didn't accept the money. She moved to another city, got certified again, quietly enrolled in community college, not for anyone else's redemption, but to finish what she started. Some stories don't need sequels. They just need to be remembered. Chloe Williams never returned to the penthouse. She never sat in front of a camera to explain herself. She never asked for justice because she had already delivered it. Not through courts or microphones, but in the moment when she placed her hands on a child's chest and chose movement over waiting, instinct over protocol, life over legality. Charles Grayson may never say the words, they may never meet again, but every time Elena runs across a playground, every time she takes a deep, full breath of spring air, every time she draws a picture with 3 figures, there's someone, somewhere, who remembers the maid, who chose action over fear, the maid who didn't ask for permission to save a life. Maybe she was reckless. Maybe she was brave. Maybe She was exactly who the world didn't know it needed. Chloe now stands outside a small clinic on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. She wears a faded white coat, a stethoscope, a name tag that reads Nurse Williams. Her smile is soft, tired, earned. Inside the building, a child laughs in the waiting room. Outside, the sun warms her shoulders. She doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. The world knows her story, even if they never say her name. Because sometimes, the people who change everything are the ones who quietly walk away when the work is done.